Okay, beautiful souls, we are in for a real treat. I cannot wait to dig into today's episode. We've got Brian Galke in the house. He is the decoding detective, an expert in communication by utilizing the technique of decoding facial features. These skills have helped him from being an introvert in a help desk role to a regional vice president of sales, managing a $40 million book of business. He's also an incredibly sought after keynote speaker who shares stages with people like Alex Hormozy, Brad Lee, and Janine Driver. So thank you so much for being here, Brian. I have so been looking forward to this conversation. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have a blast.
Yes, I love it. So for someone who's like, what is a decoding detective and what does that mean? Like, tell us more about that and this whole
Sure.
technique of decoding someone's facial expressions and features.
Yeah, so I grew up as an introvert, and so what do good introverts do is we pick up books on like how to understand people. So early on, I loved books on body language, networking. When I first moved into sales, how to meet friends and influence people. Dale Carnegie type stuff, and I always loved it. And I had a roommate at the time, right after college, who he was a pharmaceutical rep. And what do they do is they always get all kinds of training and stuff like that. So I would always get his books. And I just loved, like, a book came out that was on body language and understanding people, and I absolutely loved it. So that was always my way of, I felt like growing up as an introverted extrovert, like I loved to be around people, but I was terrified to be around people at the same time.
Yeah.
I was always looking like to understand people. And there's still times when I'm out, like I'll go to an event. And part of why I wear my branding is because people know who I am, because that way people approach me. I don't have to approach them.
I love it.
Yeah.
Mark.
But in 2010, what really changed my life is I met a guy who lives here in Dallas, Fort Worth. He actually is right by TCU College.
Mhm.
A friend came in from out of town. She said, let's go to dinner. I show up at the restaurant. She cancels. I'm like, oh, here we go.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And she's like, well, no, I'm not coming to dinner because you need to come meet this guy. And this was pre-Uber times. I'm like, no, I've already ordered a glass of wine. I don't drink and drive.
Mhm.
She finally convinced me to go. And I'm like, why should I come meet this guy? And she goes, because he reads faces. And I go, yeah, I'm not going for that. So
Yeah.
I thought, no, but she convinced me to go, but I went with a plan. And that was, this guy ruined my dinner plan. So I'm going to ruin his night and prove that he's a fraud.
Perfect.
And when I went over there, he was just a genuinely nice guy. And so that was the first part. I was expecting some really sleazy, salesy kind of person, right?
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, here we go. He was just genuinely kind-hearted guy. His name's Mac Fulfer. And he just started talking to me. And then he sat all of us down at dinner and he went person by person and kind of decoded everybody's faces. And I was paying attention because I was trying to catch him doing like generic statements, AKA Barnum statements, which are so generic they apply to everyone. Like, oh, you've had a hard time in life, or,
Right.
and instead it was very tactical information. And I would look for people who had the same facial feature and see, would he say the same thing twice or not?
Mhm.
So I was trying to bust this guy
Mhm.
and he absolutely did not do it. Anyway, so he dissected everyone. Then when he got to me, I'm like, this guy's been digging through my trash. Like, it was eerie
Nice. Yeah.
how accurate he was with understanding what's kind of going on. And
Mhm.
so that was the whole thing. Is I thought, okay, maybe there's something to it. But I bought his book, I bought his flashcards, and I would take it with me. And I was traveling on the road. I was an installer. I used to go and put technical equipment in jails and prisons. So I had a lot of time where I was at restaurants, bars by myself. So I'd naturally leave the book out. And people go, what's the book about? And I go, well, I kind of think this guy's full of crap. Can I tell you what I see on your face? And you look at the book and agree or disagree.
Mhm.
And I was pretty surprised. It was never 100%, but it was in the high 90s. And I'm like, well, okay, maybe there's something to this. So all through 2011, I would go drive from Dallas to Fort Worth, 45 minutes each way, twice a month, and do group training.
Yeah.
And I just got it. And I wasn't telling anybody what I was doing, because it's kind of shameful if you feel like you have to study people instead of like it should just come naturally.
Mm.
There was some shame associated with it. So I wasn't telling anybody what I was doing, but I kept getting promotions at work. And it was because what I learned is, when you learn to focus on other people, you learn to get out of your own way.
So true.
Yeah. And so when you learn to give people your time and attention, especially in a day and age that this device
Mhm.
takes over so much of our time, it
Yeah.
was just a huge game changer in that all of a sudden, when you're focused on other people, you get out of the prison of your own mind, you get into the present moment.
Yes.
And when you're really trying to focus on other people, it's a sign of respect. And
Mhm.
the analogy I like to give is, when I was a young traveler, I was the obnoxious American traveler. And that is, I'd go to other countries and I'd assume that they should speak English. And if they don't, well, I'd speak English louder. You know?
Mhm.
And
Nice.
that's just not the way to handle things in life.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And when I learned basic phrases in their language, it made a difference. So I learned good morning, good afternoon, please, thank you. Because when you try to speak someone else's language, they try to speak yours as well.
Mm, so true.
Yeah.
Mm, so good. You know what I love too about the way that you've leaned into this experience of like reading people's facial expressions and facial features is that
Mhm.
you're using it as a tool to connect versus using it as a tool to like judge someone or think, like I just love that you're like, no, it's a way to really connect with someone, to understand them more deeply, to speak in a way that they can hear versus speak in a way that I'm used to speaking.
Right.
That's really powerful. I love that.
And, we're accidental narcissists. And what I mean by that is we tend to think everybody thinks the way we do,
Hmm.
and not everybody does. And that's because we were raised with all good intents, the golden rule, which is treat people the way you want to be treated,
Hmm.
but you may not want to be treated like I am. I'm extremely
Right.
visual.
Hmm.
So what do I want to do? I want to show everybody pictures and memes and I want to send them,
Hmm.
all these things. That's not what everybody else wants. And
Hmm.
that's what you have to figure out is, am I speaking only my language or am I speaking theirs? So when I look at people, I look at different facial features and think, okay, are we speaking the same language or are we not? And if not, what are we doing to change it? You know? So
Absolutely.
that's the whole thing. But it's when you learn truly, truly to take yourself out of it
Hmm.
and what your wants and needs are and focus on, is this the right thing? Am I talking to the right person? All these things, it makes a world of difference, a
Mm,
true world of difference.
absolutely. Yeah. I'm curious too for someone like myself that's like a complete beginner in this. What are the basics of decoding someone's face? Like what do you have them start with? Are there like some top features that you're like, look at these 4 or 5 things? Like, and what do those mean?
Yes.
Okay.
So I love eyebrows. And the
Hmm.
reason why is because eyebrows lead to eye contact.
Hmm.
And so in this day and age where people really struggle with eye contact,
Hmm.
it's just one of those things of, we're so used to texting people or checking our smartwatches, and we
Right.
check in on people online. We don't check in with people anymore.
So true.
And online isn't where people really are. It's
Hmm.
slightly different, right?
Yeah.
And so I'll load you up. Let me show you some fun stuff and some PowerPoints here. So I've got two different ones that we're going to look at today.
Cool.
Let's go with this one first. All right, let's see if I can share, and we'll kind of blow through these fairly quick. Let me first make this one full screen, and then we will
This
go.
will be fun. We'll
Yeah,
describe what we're looking at for those that are listening. And then, of
right.
course, if you're watching it on YouTube, you're good to go.
All right,
Uh-huh.
perfect. So what I really loved is the things that really changed my life were understanding people by decoding their faces, having conversations with them, and then body language. But
Mhm.
what I really loved is with decoding faces, everything on the face tells us something about someone. So, like,
Mm,
how do you deliver news? How personal to get? Are they very structured? How do they want the information delivered? How do they think and take and process information? All these different things mattered. And kind of like we talked about earlier, this day and age, people feel so disconnected that when you actually help people feel seen and heard, and you don't just
mhm,
show up with commission breath, it makes a world of difference when you're
mhm.
talking to people. And the really cool thing that I liked about it is it's something I could use both on Zoom and in the room with people. So if I was meeting with people on Zoom, body language is out the window,
Mhm,
but faces aren't.
mhm,
And what you can do is you can even cheat and go look up people ahead of time. But we mentioned earlier, like a lot of your audience is entrepreneurs, people trying to grow their business. I want to show you some fun stats, and that is for people who start out in business, if you learn soft skills, people skills, then
mhm,
what you see is increase in revenue, higher win rates, and your productivity goes up because you're not wasting time in certain areas.
mm,
And then once you learn that, then it comes over to, well, what does that mean for the company? Higher profits, higher profit margins. And then when you learn to make better business connections, we all know that, we're the average of the 5 people who are around us.
uh-huh,
And so while everybody's very, very familiar with artificial intelligence, AI, we're using it in our everyday business, what most people are using it for is figuring out who can they get rid of. So what they're talking about right now is with AI coming on, up to 30% people are going to lose jobs. Between 400 and 800 million people are going to be replaced by AI or automation by 2030.
mm,
So what you really have to learn is skills like what you teach, what I teach, and that is how to
mhm.
understand people that much more. So
Yes.
the first thing I think you have to be is you have to be already interesting. And what I mean by that is when we meet somebody, what's the first thing we do is we go and we Google them. So when we go and we Google them, do they have a wow factor? Do they have a social media presence? Does something on their page make you want to stay on the page with them? And then after that is, how easily can I find you? Where can I find you? Does what's on your page make them want to come back?
Mm-hmm.
That's the big things. And so what do we need to do as entrepreneurs is figure out what are our people looking for? How do we attract the ideal client? How you do that is with videos, pictures, posts, and testimonials. And the big thing is don't be afraid to copy someone else, but then make it your own at the same time. So if you see something working in a different industry, a different niche, follow it up to yours as well.
The same, but different.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I love
That's
that from
so
that
funny.
movie.
I know. Nice.
And then what I think is really important is what we were talking about before, and that is, are you really speaking people's language? So I'll give you a different one. Let me jump over here real fast, because I do want to start with eyebrows, because that's my favorite part. And I do want to answer a question. As people go, oh, well, what's it based on? It's the 43 muscles in the face. The mind creates movement. Movement creates muscle. And so our faces are constantly changing over time. And so people go, nah, that can't be true. So I like showing pictures of me at 18 versus 38. And
Wow.
you can see how much, like, look, my ears used to stick away farther from my head. My eyebrows used to be a
Mhm.
different shape. Like our faces are constantly changing. But you asked,
Wow.
like, what are the ones that I love? So what I really loved is you can go and look up people ahead of time on social media and just start figuring out, like, how do you understand them that much better? But
Mhm.
to your point, what do I love to start with is I love starting with eyebrows. And that's
Uh-huh.
because if you don't think eyebrows are important, then go and Google people without eyebrows.
Oh my God. Hello.
So it completely changes. And people are like, oh, this is a horrible. How could you leave us with that? And I'm like, all right, well, I got you.
Yeah.
So go and Google babies with eyebrows drawn on.
Yes,
And it changes how we see the kids.
for sure.
And so
Wow.
a very simple analogy. I love this one right here because it's like a little evil genius and it's just a baby
Mhm.
laughing.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So what I like here is just another example. You take away one facial feature and it changes how we see the person.
Mhm.
So we pay a lot more attention. And as I mentioned before, if you're an introvert, well, eyebrows lead to eye contact. And so it's a big deal. So when you start looking at people, you can learn how much time do they need to make a decision and how do they want that information presented to them. And we talk about facial features all the time. We say things like take one on the chin, keep a stiff upper lip. But we also talk about like highbrow humor and lowbrow humor. So highbrow humor is where somebody like tells you a joke and you think about it and then you laugh. Lowbrow humor is immediate laughter, jackass, Three Stooges, physical comedy. Well, what that relates to is when you look at people, the higher their eyebrows are, like all four of the people that are here, it's people, imagine eyebrows are like a speed bump. So if data is racing down your forehead to get into your eye, and I know that's not how it actually works, but just go
Mhm.
stick with me for the analogy is the higher the eyebrow, the more time they need before they like to pull the trigger. It has
Okay.
nothing to do with intelligence. It's just when do they feel comfortable pulling the trigger? So it's
Mhm.
like a speed bump in the middle of a road. You can only go so fast, go over the speed bump, and then speed back up again.
Mhm.
And so when you see high eyebrow people, if you got 30 minutes on their calendar, you're probably going to talk about 20, 25 minutes. However, on the opposite side, lowbrow humor, which is like instant laughs, the closer their eyebrow is to the eye, the faster they make decisions. And it's the result of people like going, huh, and raising their eyebrows up versus going, huh, and squinting down. So again, it's
Mhm.
those 43 muscles in the face will tell you how fast and how do you change the presentation for the person. So if I was going into a presentation and I didn't know, let's say it was a blind evaluation committee and everybody has high eyebrows, well, we're already prepared for that because most presentations, they say, hey, you have an hour, you need to fill it. But if we walked in and everybody had very low eyebrows, we're like, oh crap, we need to take a bunch of slides out because these are
Mhm.
people who want to make decisions fast.
Mhm.
And so that's like putting a speed bump by the stop sign at the end of the road. You can race down that street and you only have to slow down at the last minute. So when you
Mhm.
start looking at people, you figure out, okay, do they need more time or do they want me to get to the point as soon as possible?
Mhm.
And you learn to start alter. So you can use this. Let's take it out of sales. Let's just say you're telling a story. If somebody's got low eyebrows, make your story short. If they've
Mm.
got high eyebrows and you love to tell a long story, stick with it. But it's learning to adjust to the person instead of just saying what I want to say.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah. So then you start just looking at people and figuring out. So let's say we're out at this networking event. Who needs the most amount of time? Number four,
Mhm.
because she has the highest eyebrows. So then I would look at number three after that. And then one, two, and five are pretty much the same. So you just look at eyebrow height will tell you needs more time or makes a decision fast. And so we teach this, probably the craziest industry that this is taught to is door-to-door sales because they
Mhm.
have 7 seconds before somebody pulls a gun on them, slams the door shut, or calls the cops.
Nice. Such a
So,
job.
yeah.
Yeah, my heart goes out to all of those people that are
Oh,
experiencing that. Yeah.
you talk about taking a lot of no's. They're
Yeah.
out in the summer heat.
Mhm.
When nobody likes anybody knocking on their door anymore. That's why most people have
For
ring
sure.
doorbells, everything
Yes.
else. But they're still out there doing it. And these kids are killing it, like 19, 20 years old, making 2 to 500,000 a summer,
Mhm. Mhm.
selling solar, alarm systems, pesticide. It works.
Mhm.
So what they do is when they're training, they learn their script, they learn their materials, they learn objections. But what they also learn is how to talk to the person who answers the door.
Mhm.
And they never know that until the door's open. And so they have
Yeah.
to that fast change what they want to say
Mhm.
based on who answers the door.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
what else are you looking for besides just eyebrows? Like what's like the next thing that tells a lot
Well,
about someone, let's say in reference to sales, closing a sale, things like that.
so we're still going to stick with eyebrows because I want the
Okay.
eyebrows that lead to eye contact. But
Cool.
there's 3 basic shapes of eyebrows, and even Legos knows that.
Mm.
So when you look, like, I've got an 8-year-old, she's got Legos. Guess what they have? They have either straight eyebrows, angled eyebrows, rounded eyebrows, or they have a combination of the 3.
Mhm.
So it's like the game we play as a kid, put the right peg in the right hole and
Yes.
you'll be good. So when you meet people with straight eyebrows, it gets straight to the point. Facts, figures, data.
Got
So
it.
now here's what's crazy is television and movies has also taught it this to us. So look up here. This is the character they have as Spock. What did they do with the guy's eyebrows? They
They
made
made
it
him straight
straight.
grass. Yeah.
Yeah. Warren Buffett, straight right here. What's he about? All the numbers, facts,
Mhm.
figures, data.
Mhm.
So that's the first one is get straight to the point.
Mhm.
If the next one, I have angled eyebrows. That's what's my angle? Help me understand it first. Like I want to learn the material so I can figure out how to help other people. So
Right.
you'll find this with a lot of speakers, a lot of trainers, teachers. Why? They have to learn the material first to then teach it to other people. So when you
Mm.
see an angled eyebrows, help them understand it, then they can help other people. So what's their angle? And then the third one is rounded eyebrows. Think about the people around them first and themselves second. So
Mm.
when I was growing up, Oprah was the popular TV show, but it was titled Oprah, but we watched it for everybody except Oprah. Who was she going to interview and what was she going to give to her audience?
Mhm.
So when you see rounded eyebrow people, you have to talk about how their clients, their friends, their families all win first and how they win second. So if you
Mhm.
try and talk to a rounded eyebrow person and say like, this is once you get my product, you're going to win, they don't understand that. But if you
Mhm.
say, once you purchase my product or you join my course, the way that your friends and family are going to benefit, that they understand. So
Mm.
it's about just
Interesting.
looking how to deal with people. So I travel quite a bit. And let's say I want to get an upgrade in the hotel room. Well, based on who's at the desk determines how I ask for the upgrade.
Mhm.
So if they have straight eyebrows, I'd like an upgrade, please. If
Mhm.
they have angled eyebrows, hi, I'm Brian Galke. I'm a diamond member. Is an upgrade available? What's
Mhm.
their angle? Well, they're helping out a diamond member.
Mhm.
If they have rounded eyebrows, they like to help other people. So I'll be like, oh, that flight was so long, that drive was so long. I wish I had a room I could stretch out in, just I don't like small rooms. I get kind of claustrophobic. Is an upgrade available?
Mhm.
So I'm asking for an upgrade, but I'm asking based on the person that's there. And
Mhm.
so once again, when you walk into a room, you can just start looking at people and figuring out how do I ask for what I want? Because everything we want in life, other people can help us get there. But if we don't know
Mhm.
how to communicate our wants and needs, they can't help us.
Mm.
Now, what's really crazy is if you look at person 1 and 2, they have glasses on, right?
Mhm.
But what do you notice about their glasses? They
Hmm.
match their eyebrows.
They do, don't they?
Yes. So the first one,
Yeah.
what does he have? High rounded. So what does that
Uh-huh.
mean? He thinks about other people first, himself second. And because they're high, he's going to need a little more time. So I'm going to talk dramatically different between 1 and 2. So if the people who are listening, the first person has very high eyebrows that are rounded. Person number 2 has very low eyebrows that are straight. So even though I have a product, a coaching service, a business offer, whatever it is, I need to be able to just explain it 2 completely different ways because it's 2 completely different people that I'm selling to right here.
Mhm.
Then you look at the third one, she's got an angled eyebrow, angled eyebrow, angled eyebrow. So these 3 are pretty much the same. Now, what you may not have noticed though is notice how on her left-hand side, so an easy way to remember, there's 2 sides of our face. There's a personal side and a professional side. So for
Mhm.
those who are listening, in the US, where do we wear wedding rings? On the left hand. So on the left hand, if I say, hey, are you married? That's kind of a personal question. Left
Mhm.
hand side right here, This is always the personal side of someone's face. This is the
Mm,
professional side. So you have to know, is your product or service going to be used in their personal life or in their professional life if their faces are different? So if they're asymmetrical, you have to know, who am I talking to? If they're symmetrical, which everybody's a little asymmetrical, but like, for example, I have both angled eyebrows, but I used to
mhm,
have straight eyebrows. But the lady that's here, number 3, she has on her left side rounded eyebrows and on her work side angled eyebrows. So what
mhm.
does that mean? At home, she thinks about everyone else first, but at work, she wants to know, what's her angle, help her understand it.
Mm. That's so cool.
Yeah. So that's just very, very basics. But some of the other things, to answer your question, because I want to go back to you and I full screen, not just presenting the whole time,
Mhm,
is then I look at eyelids, because eyelids reveal like intimacy needs. So if
mhm,
you've read the 5 love languages, 3 of the
mhm,
5 are on people's faces.
mhm,
So the first one is upper eyelid. The fuller it is, the more time and attention they are.
mhm.
Below the nose and above the lip, the wider this area is, it's called the libido line. That's physical touch. And if somebody
Mm,
has a line right here below their lip and above their chin, that's a verbal affirmation lines, AKA words of affirmation. So even in your
interesting.
romantic or personal life, you can look at people and figure out what's their love language. Unfortunately, there's not ones for gift giving and acts of service, but hey,
Mhm,
I'll take 3 out of 5
mhm.
when I'm trying to understand someone.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so interesting. So I'm so curious too, when you think about people that are leading teams, like
Mhm.
how they can, so I love how we talk about the sales of things, like how we can kind of utilize this when it comes to sales. How would you say this translates into how people that are leading teams can show up as a better leader for the people that they're guiding and supporting?
Sure. It's a universal skill. So the reason we talk sales first is because most people are entrepreneurs that need to grow their business.
Mhm.
But what do they need once they get that, is they need teams to help them execute.
Right.
It's the same skill, you're just using it internally. So what is have you ever been an employee, or have you always been an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I was an employee for 15 years and then moved into this. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right. So I was 21 and a half, right, in
Mhm.
corporate America. And
Yep.
what's the one thing that nobody wants to be in a corporation is a number.
Right.
People want to know, like, you value me as a person and you understand me as a person. Our faces tell you how to talk to your employees.
Mhm.
So all those same skills that we're learning for sales, you can apply to your staff as well. So if somebody has like a thinner upper lip, we say the
Mhm.
phrase, "Hey, keep a stiff upper lip," when we want them to be stoic or stop sharing information. So if
Mm.
somebody has a thinner upper lip and you're asking them a lot of personal questions, that's kind of feels like this. You're
Yeah.
you're in their face.
Mhm.
But so what you can do is you can ask them, like, just business questions, things like that. And then once they open up, then hey, they're fair game. So that's like your employees. If somebody has this little line I mentioned earlier, the words of affirmation line, I had an employee who won a state contract that was worth millions of dollars, and he got a nice bonus from it.
Mhm.
But he was more thrilled with the letter he got, the email from the CEO saying, "Thank you so much for your hard work. What a great win," because he was words of affirmation.
Yeah.
So some people are title, some people are pay, some people are praise, some people are physical touch, which this day and age in the workplace you can't really do. But
Right.
something, a pat on the shoulder,
Mhm.
means more to someone than anything else. So
Yeah.
there's all these things. And then where else does it apply? In your personal life. So once I learned this skill, even people I'd known my entire life, friends, family, I learned to view differently
Mhm.
than I did before. So for example, we talked about people who have very low eyebrows. If they have low, straight eyebrows, they have a tendency to interrupt other people because they
Mm.
got there and they want to help you get there as fast as they did. They think
Mm.
they're helping you. We feel interrupted.
Interesting.
But
Yeah.
with the face comes grace. So people who used to interrupt me, now if I look and they have low eyebrows, I'm like, that's just the way they're wired.
So true.
Yes.
So when you're keynote speaking and you're looking out at a room full of thousands of people, where do you start to differentiate on like which ones to hone in for feedback and which ones not? Like, do you utilize this skill when you're
I,
speaking?
absolutely. So what
Okay.
you do is when somebody has that facial feature you're talking about, you make
Yep.
eye contact with them.
Mhm.
Now, I'll tell anybody who wants to be a speaker, who do you look for when you're getting up and you're nervous? Look for people with rounded eyebrows. Why?
So
Because they
true.
want to support the people around them and they're the ones beaming and shaking their head yes and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. That's who I'll look for at times.
Mhm.
But it all depends on what we're doing. So whoever you're talking to is who I'd look at the time. So I'll show you something kind of a little different. I wasn't planning on talking about this, but it's relevant to what you just asked. So let me find it right here. Is another good question that you can ask people is like, am I speaking their language in a different way? So when you look at people, people are either auditory learners, visual learners, or kinesthetic learners. So when you look at people, for example, here, these were 4 judges on The Voice. What was The Voice? It was where all the judges started like this. If they like what they heard, then they turn around to see what they actually look like.
Yeah.
Well, what you notice in all 4 judges are larger ears and smaller eyes on every one of them. So it makes sense. And people go, well, they're 4 musicians. Doesn't that just prove the point even more? They're auditory people. So when you see somebody who's auditory, how do you keep in contact with them? You call them, you send them a voice text, FaceTime with them, because they want to hear things. They love sound words. So like, for example, one of my really good friends, Janine Driver, she's a body language expert, has a phenomenal book. If you have not read it, this is a great one. It's called You Say More Than You Think. And it's what does your body language say about you when you enter a room? So we buy all these books on how to read other people's body language, but we don't think, how are we showing up? But if I want to talk to Janine, I will send her text messages, memes. She ignores me. I send her a voice text or FaceTime her and she picks up immediately. So I just know if I want to talk to Janine, I need to alter my way because I'm visual. And I have to go and send her a voice text or FaceTime with her. I FaceTime with 2 people pretty regularly. That's my daughter and Janine Driver, because she's auditory and she loves to hear what's going on. So you just learn to adapt to different people. So that's if they have larger ears. And it's not a direct comparison because your ears are always going to be larger than your eyes. It's for the portion of your face or proportion of your face. Do they look large or small for the size of your head, in your ears or your eyes? So you can see 3 people here that all have larger eyes. We don't even have to see their ears. We just know that they have large eyes. So they're visual people. So visual people, what do they want? They want to see it. You know, show me sites. Let me see the pictures. Text me, email me. Again, do videos for people, because the best thing about videos are people get to hear your voice and see you at the same time. It's the next best thing to Zoom or being in the room. So I love to do videos for that reason. Now, so I'm extremely visual. I'm always constantly showing people like pictures on my phone and everything else because I want people to see what I'm talking about. But if I'm doing that to somebody who's auditory, it doesn't work well. So in a past relationship, we came up with a plan of who's going to the store determines how do we talk to the other person. So she was extremely auditory. I'm extremely visual. If I'm going to the store, you better text me what you want, or I'm coming back with like 2 of the right things and 5 of the wrong things. But when she was going, I couldn't text her because it would just piss her off. I had to tell her, this is what I need. And she was good with that. So you just learn to adapt to who the person you're talking to. So that's how we came up with the system, depending on who was running to the store. Well, as we go, okay, whoever's doing the action, the person communicating with them needs to communicate in their language. And it made things easier. So then the third one is right here. This is the area below the nose and above the lip. The wider that is, that's called the libido line. But that lets you know that they're a kinesthetic hands-on learner. So when you see that on people, send them something to hold, give them software to play with, give them a website to go check out, right? Send them documents. That's what kinesthetic people want, is things that they can kind of play around and get their hands dirty. So when you're talking to them, give them something they can touch, action words, you know, do a walking tour of something. So realtors that do the walk through the houses, kinesthetic people love that because they feel like they're walking with them through the house. So you just learn over time, like, how do I present the information for the person instead of pitch my product? And once you learn to do that, it changes everything. Because when you don't come across as having commission breath, you're really thinking, is this the right product for the right person? Am I the right coach for the right person? Is that somebody I want to work with? You know, and you just learn to change and adapt these things. And that's the whole thing. This day and age, this right here is rare. I don't know if you saw, intelligent.com did a study in December of 2023 where they had tried to hire kids right out of school. They talked to 800 employers. 53% of them couldn't make eye contact through in an in-person interview. 21% refused to turn on their camera for a virtual interview.
Wild. Yeah.
But you think about it, they grew up with this device, right?
Yes.
We
Absolutely.
didn't. Like, I grew up with no caller ID. You know, you couldn't, everything you wanted required you talking to a person.
Yep.
You know, the phone just rang, you said hello.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't have the ability to perfect everything. And so that's what this device is it connects us to the world, but it disconnects us from each other. And the problem with it is, especially kids growing up with it, and I see this even in my daughter who's 8, is she lives in a world of perfection. And that
Mm.
is, she doesn't like the picture, delete it and take another one. She
Mm.
can send a text. What can we do now in text messages is we can edit it and resend, or we can recall it. I grew up like just on the cusp of getting computers. I'm 50. And so I originally had a typewriter in class, and then we got a computer like an Apple II
Mhm.
and learned keyboarding. But now you think about it, even just a few years ago when text messages first came out, when it sent, it was done.
Mhm.
Now I can edit every Instagram DM, I can edit every text message, you name it. We can constantly change and perfect everything. So they did these studies with kids now where they have them walk up to the front of class and try and have a conversation like, hi, how's it going? Like they won't make eye contact.
Mhm.
But then the professor will say, okay, turn back to back and text each other, and they'll have entire conversations.
Wow.
And that's why even online dating is so fascinating to people, is why you get to have these questions that you're afraid to ask in person, that there's a little bit of anonymous to it, where you can ask these things that you wouldn't ask in person. Then by the time they meet, they feel like they know each other.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. But the whole thing is that's getting to know somebody on a connection level, but you may still have these differences in our faces. So like I have a dating course called Looking for Love in All the Wrong Faces.com.
I love it. So good.
Yeah. And it's just, what do we have in common and what's different? There is no right or wrong facial feature. But
Mhm.
like we mentioned before, I was in a relationship with somebody who was extremely auditory. So what did
Mhm.
she want to do? She wanted to go to concerts and listen to music. I'm more visual. I'd rather go to the movies. And it's fine. But it's saying like, okay, how do we meet in the middle?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm.
So it's a universal skill. I mean, I get paid to teach it to businesses because that's where the money is, right? Is
Mhm.
sales teams always have a budget, but
Mhm.
it's really a communication skill that
Mhm.
applies to everyone.
Yes.
And because it's proactive, you can go and look up people ahead of time, or when you walk into a room, you can immediately size someone up.
Mhm.
And whereas body language and statement analysis, body language, they have to move their body. Statement analysis, they have to say something. Now, I'm
Mhm.
well educated in those. Matter of fact, I catch people all the time, not on purpose, but it's a result of knowing these skills. Like somebody told me, hey, by the way, I ended this thing. I'm like, well, wait a minute. What did you end if nothing was happening before? And they're like, oh, well, I wasn't going to tell you, but I'm like, yeah. So people's words give them away also. So what you really have to learn this day and age is learn to pay attention to what people say and do. But the trick is, don't turn yourself into, like I'm called the decoding detective, but don't make people feel interrogated, but pay attention to what people do, say, and how they move their body.
Mm.
Because that right now is what AI and automation can't do, is it
Right.
can't replace you and I being in a room together.
Mhm.
And that's
Yes.
what's going to keep people employed. That's what's going to keep businesses open, is soft skills and learning how to deal with other people. And then add on top of that, everything that you teach about regulation of yourself. How do you maintain yourself? What are you doing? I had a business deal go bad. I spiraled out of control like 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
And I went to a place that did breath work and everything with me to get me recentered. And now I'm back on
Mhm.
track again.
Yes. Yes.
So
Mhm.
it's all these skills that we need to learn, because if you haven't been watching, it's scary. Like by 2030, the amount of jobs are expected to be replaced. People need to start working on people skills right now.
Mhm.
But they were talking about just kids who graduate out of college. Most entry level white collar jobs are being replaced by AI.
Mhm.
So right now we see people losing jobs, but we're not focused on people who can't even get jobs anymore.
Mhm.
So the way to stand out is building rapport and connection with people,
Yes.
because rapport is how you build relationships. Business comes as a result of relationships in the long run.
Mhm.
Oh,
Mm.
look, you and I are a perfect example. I met you because I'm friends with Amberly
Mhm.
Log. When she does her podcasts and interviews and stuff, she's like, hey, I've got the larger room. Do you want to come sit in the audience? I'm like, yeah, why not? So that relationship with Amberly and then being in the room is how we got to be right here, right now.
Mhm. Right.
And then we have a mutual friend, Jen, right, who I always see you on their stuff. And
Yeah.
I met her when we both spoke at High Level, and I was really impressed with her book. Like when I went through it, I've got almost like every page underlined, marked. Like it's a great book to get to know.
Mhm. Be Seen by Jen Gottlieb. Such a
Yes.
good book. Yes.
And I said this to her face, so it's not talking bad behind her. I really thought when it first came out, somebody's like, "Oh, she was a VH1, rock star model or whatever." I'm like, there's nothing to learn from her. And somebody
Mm,
recommended her book, and I was blown away by how
yeah.
good of a book it was because I'd never seen her speak. But when somebody just said, "Oh, well, it used to be on VH1 and all this," I thought, there's nothing. And that book is such an incredible book. But
Yes.
I
So
picked
good.
it up because somebody I trusted recommended it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm, so good. Relationships are everything. They're the
Yes.
ways that we scale our business faster. They're the ways that we, meet our soulmates and the people that we love most. Like you were saying, we like attracts like. So we're
Yes.
surrounding ourselves with people that are, in a similar energy as us. So if you're vibing with someone, you probably vibe with many people in their community too. So yeah, it's so important to just lean in the spaces that feel good. And
Yes.
to your point, like learning these subtle skills can be so powerful while utilizing that with your intuition. Because to your point, there is that little like degree of like, it usually means this, but it could also mean this. So I
Right.
think it's powerful to use both of just like having these skills and simultaneously use your intuition, lean in and see what feels true.
100%. People, it's kind of funny. People go, "Oh, intuition, all that isn't there." I'm like, then how do you know when you're driving down the road that the person in the next car is like staring at you? Because all of a sudden you
Uh
get this
huh.
weird feeling and you're like,
Yes,
you know,
exactly. Yes. Uh huh. Yeah.
I think it's dormant in us. It's just with some people, it's not as dormant as it is in others. I mean,
Mhm.
we value connection. We can all tell when like a good soul or a bad soul walks into a room. Like when
Mhm.
somebody who
Yeah.
just reeks bad walks into a room, like instinctively, it's like, okay, I need to pay attention to this predator.
Mhm.
You know, when somebody walks in that can absolutely disarm a room, it's the same thing. You
Yes.
know, you just their energy, their vibe. We learn to pay attention to so many things because what's built into our DNA and everything else is survival genes.
Mhm.
And we pick up on more than we know. That's why Malcolm Gladwell's the book Blink
Mm.
is we think that we have to logically know everything, but really it's emotionally and subconsciously things that we pick up that we don't know how to interpret and explain
Mhm.
that are changed like every interaction with every person. And we
Mhm.
don't know what it is. We call it our gut feeling or whatever. There's definitely an intuitive side to all of us. It's
Mm.
just most people are taught to turn it off. I can tell
Yes.
you, you need to learn to turn it on or
Yes.
you will be replaced by AI and automation.
Mm. Ugh, I love the balance of this where you're like, there's a science and then there's also the intuitive part.
Yes.
So important. I love that. So powerful. Do you find you're ever like over analyzing someone's face and you're like, oh my God, I'm not even present? Or do you feel like it's just second nature now?
It's actually not even second nature initially. Like initially, I
Okay.
want to really know the person,
Yeah.
and a skill that I need to improve upon is names. So when I'm first meeting
Mm.
them, I'm thinking,
Yeah.
"What's their name? What's their name? What's their name?"
Mhm. Yeah,
But
for sure.
then when if like I start getting ADD kicking in or something else, and I start to get distracted, I pull myself back in by
Hmm.
focusing on a different facial feature, and
Oh,
then
nice.
making sure, am I keeping the communication both ways, or am I only speaking my language?
Mm, cool. I love
Yes.
it. Just curious, do dimples mean anything?
Dimples are a consensus builder. So there's three consensus builders that are on the face that come
Oh,
in
cool.
naturally. So the first one is if you have very, very light eyebrows, they're called chameleon eyebrows.
Uh-huh.
And what that is they because they're so light, people can't pick up a shape. So we don't think, oh, there's a difference between us and them. The next
Mm,
one is if you have the Cupid's bow, and that is in your upper lip. Let me move my microphone a little bit. In your upper lip, does it make that little arrow? That little arrow is a subconscious sign that says, listen to me when I talk. Now,
mm,
I just spoke at an aesthetics conference back in January, and all the estheticians didn't know why they were putting that arrow in, but it's
yeah.
actually a subconscious sign that says, listen to me when I talk.
Hmm.
And people go, oh, we don't pay that much attention to lips. I'm like, okay, well, then I'll just do the rest of the talk like this. It
Mm,
matters. And
it
if
does.
anybody remembers during COVID, it especially mattered, right? At the
Yes.
time, my daughter was 2
Mm,
and trying to learn how to make words and form sentences, and she couldn't watch and mimic her teacher.
that's crazy.
Yeah,
Oh,
so,
yeah.
you think about kids who are now anywhere from age, let's just say 10 to let's see, so it was 5 years ago that was. So let's say 6 to 12.
Mhm,
Their language capacity was inhibited by a year to 2 years
mhm.
because they couldn't see the mouths of the people they were trying to learn the skills from.
Wow. Yeah. So
And that
interesting.
yeah, and you look at all the studies of all the kids that graduated college the last 2 years remotely who took online courses and then tried to get jobs, they
Mhm.
failed at the jobs because they weren't used to
Mm,
interacting with people.
mhm.
Yeah,
Mm,
so we need people more than we realize. If you look at what is the worst, if we have the worst of the worst person, where do we put them in? Isolation.
yeah.
no other contact with human beings. If we know that's the worst punishment, why is that? Because we're naturally connected to want to seek and build community and tribes with other people.
Mm-hmm. So true. Mm.
Yeah.
So what do dimples mean? I don't think we did
Oh,
those.
sorry. I got
No,
you
you're
showed
good.
it.
I love the tangent. It was so good.
Dimples are the third consensus builder because we're
Yeah.
just naturally drawn to dimples. So when people with dimples smile, we're like,
Mhm.
oh, those are great. So
Mhm.
it's the three are the chameleon eyebrows, the cupid's bow, and dimples are three consensus builders that if you're lucky enough to just have them genetically, good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What if you have one dimple on one side and not the other? Would it mean like you're more likely to do that in personal spaces versus business?
Professional. Yes. It just when you smile, people are like, oh, and it just depends
Yeah.
on which side are you on. Is it on
Yeah.
their left side? It's personal. Business side, it'd be this right side.
So cool.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I love this. Thank you so much. This was so
Well,
much fun. Where are you hanging out? Where can people connect with you? I'm positive they're going to want to learn
sure.
more from you. Yeah. How can they lean in?
I'll pop up a QR code, but everything is subtle skills right now. And the reason for that is when I started speaking, I was in a job I hated, absolutely hated. And what I ended up doing was I started subtle skills because what I want to do is teach everybody the same skills that help me in life. So you can see my background here. I've got Never Split the Difference by
Mhm.
Chris Voss, Janine Driver's book, You Say More Than You Think, Renee Rodriguez's book, Amplify Your Influence. I know you just saw him at Amberly's event
Yes.
recently.
Uh-huh.
Like any book that I learn from, I want to share with other people. So
Yep.
everything is subtle skills. Here, I'll share the QR code. And what people can do is they can go download the cheat sheet. They don't have to download anything. If they want and they see, they can just go and every book that I recommend is on that page. So they can scan the QR code. I am moving now more towards everything just Brian Galke. But because when I first started this company, I did it as a passion project and I didn't want it to be tied to me because I worked in government work. And so I used to sell technology to jails and prisons. So county
Mhm.
jails, state prisons, federal prisons, all that kind of stuff. So I had to separate church and state back then.
Ah,
And
yes.
so I did everything as subtle skills. And then when I left corporate America in 2022, it's just now me full time all the time.
I love it. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. So cool.
And
For
for the
those that
people,
are for those
oh,
that are tuning in auditory or listening in, we'll drop that link in the show notes so they can get that as well. And those, of course, that are watching on YouTube, you can just click that little QR code and get the link.
yeah.
Perfect. And what were you going to say?
I was going to say for people who are listening, you can go to decodetheface.com because what I learned is people can't spell subtle when they're listening.
Nice. That's so true.
Yes.
Perfect. Oh
Yes.
my gosh. Amazing. Brian, thank you so much. This was
Of
so much
course.
fun. I'm so grateful for you. And I learned so much. And I feel like this is just the beginning. Like, I feel like there's just so much more to tune into. So
Oh,
thank you
yes.
for bringing your wisdom into the space. This is going to be so helpful for everyone that's tuning in.
Absolutely. And since we live local, we'll have to grab coffee soon.
You got it. I love it. I love it. Okay. So for everyone that's tuning in, thank you so much for giving us your most precious resource, your time. We are eternally grateful for you. And until next time,
Bye, everybody.
bye.